All right, everybody, good morning. It is Monday, April 13th, which is way better than Friday the 13th. We are continuing our conversation on soft skills and professional development, and I'm using basically the courses that I've created on Pluralsight. I haven't done a count, but I'm guessing there's around 200 soft skills and professional development courses. And actually, just thinking about who I know that does courses and what they do them on, there's probably getting close to 300 now, which doesn't sound like a whole lot. Actually, it does sound like a whole lot if that's all you're going to take. But compared to the 7,000 plus courses that are on Pluralsight, it's just a tiny percentage of courses. I was talking to my 16-year-old daughter a few months ago about, what I do. Like, hey, Dad, what do you do for a living? All she sees me at my computer doing regular, staring at the screen and clicking on the keyboard every once in a while. And so I talked to her about doing soft skill and professional development courses and topics on Pluralsight. And she was like, oh, that's really cool. So basically, you're talking to people who understand computers and programming, and they put all that stuff together. And interestingly, even at 16, she has stereotyped, like the rest of the world has, that developers and people with really strong hard skills in the engineering and STEM space don't have soft skills at all. And she's like, oh, okay, so they're really good at what they do, and then you help them communicate to other humans. And I was like, yep, exactly. That's exactly what my purpose and goal with my courses has been. I just put out a tweet this morning saying that, you know what, even though it feels like we're halfway or more than halfway through with April, we still have 3 solid weeks of this free April thing. So go to pluralsight.com and sign up for an account to get full access to the entire library through the end of the month of April of 2020. If you're watching this after that, just hit me on jibberjobber.com or jason@jibberjobber.com, and I might be able to get you a 30-day pass. So anyways, take advantage. There's plenty of time for you to learn about whatever you want, whether it's my stuff with communication and soft skills and relationships. And I'm talking about professional relationships, not personal relationships. Or if you want to go into like some really cool programming stuff, back end, front end, database, design, UX, product. I'll tell you one of the coolest things that you can get in Pluralsight, because this could cost you thousands of dollars elsewhere, are the project management certification. Let's see how I should say this. The exam prep for project management professional certification. It is amazing. It's put together by Casey Ayers, and he is a brilliant, I want to say kid. He has a very youthful face. So a brilliant professional person out of Florida, one of the smartest thinkers that I've ever been able to sit down and chat with. And he put together over a dozen, I can't remember how many, but there's a whole bunch of courses that prepare you to pass the PMP test exam, which is really, really cool. So I definitely recommend that you go check that out. Tomorrow, we will continue this series, and we're going to talk about effective email communication, which, just like I said a week ago about the listening course, I didn't think anybody was going to watch this emailing course, because I thought, okay, first of all, boring. Second of all, we've been emailing or reading emails for a long time. Everybody knows how to write emails, and everybody knows how to write emails that get read, I hope. And so anyways, it's turned out to be a pretty popular course, and apparently not a lot of people, well, I don't know how to say this. A lot of people are interested in learning how to write emails better. And so that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. So the course that we're talking about today is called Leading with Emotional Intelligence. And this is what I call my emotional intelligence course. I'm not sure if I'll do another course on emotional intelligence. It was interesting putting this course together because, I believe if you watch any of my leadership courses, that I feel that whether you have a management or a leadership title or not, that you are a leader. You might be what I call the de facto leader. So maybe you're on a team and there's a team leader, but people don't really pay attention to the team leader. Like for some reason, that team leader isn't an effective leader, or the team leader hasn't earned respect, or there's somebody else on the team that has earned that respect, and people are like, okay, I hear what you say, but let's go see what Jane says over there, right? And so I would call Jane the de facto leader. Like she isn't put there, she's not the leader because of her position or her designation, but it's just because people follow her, right? And you've probably known people in your life that aren't necessarily in some position of authority, but people follow them. And so when I say leading with emotional intelligence, it's actually an interesting title because first of all, I'm thinking about the leadership management authority versus the de facto leadership. And anybody can be a leader and everybody could be a leader. By the way, I think that one of the best ways to be a leader is to make sure that you're following in the right way and the right person. I'm not saying to follow everybody blindly just because they have a title. We need to follow them. But I think that if you do have a decent and or a strong leader and you can support that leader, I think it shows your leadership abilities when you follow and support the leader. And maybe that means you counsel the leader in private and you help them understand some of the things that they could do differently or whatever. But anyway, so that's one angle of the leading with emotional intelligence. The other angle of this title, leading with, is it makes me think like it doesn't even have to do with the title or a position, right? Or your role. It's just what I lead with, how I am, who I am. And so here's something that's really cool. When I started studying for this course and really kind of just synthesizing and figuring out what I wanted to do with any information that I was gathering from everywhere. So I was reading a lot of blog posts. I went and looked at all the videos that I could find on emotional intelligence, and I got a stack of books like this high on emotional intelligence. And I found the Bible, which is, I think it's Emotional Intelligence 2.0 by Daniel Goleman with a G, not a C. And that was a great book. It was actually a really interesting read. There was a lot of stories and examples and stuff like that of emotional intelligence. And then I was talking to my kids about this, and there's a mentor, a teacher at their school who she's like the school nurse, but she also teaches a class. I don't remember what it's on. But I found out that she loves talking about and teaching the kids about emotional intelligence. And I thought that was really intriguing and interesting. And so I got in touch with her. I've known her for years. I got in touch with her and I said, hey, can we talk about this? Like, can we get on a call or whatever? And she's like, how about I come over to your house? And I was like, great, perfect. So she came over and we sat down for like 2 hours. And I had pages and pages. By the end of this 2 hours, I had pages and pages of notes that I was taking, going through this fascinating conversation with someone who was so passionate about emotional intelligence. And it was interesting because emotional intelligence was never really anything that crossed my radar as like something important to look at or something important to study. And so, but by the end of this conversation, I was absolutely fascinated with the topic. And I just had to figure out what to do with all of this information that I was taking in, including the information from her. So fast forward to, I don't know, a month or two later when I got the course out, and I remember going on Twitter and I said something about how this is the course that I feel like will have the biggest impact on, I don't know, my impact, not impact on from any other people, but this is one of the most important topics and courses that I can put out there. And I really feel like if we can improve our emotional intelligence individually, if we can help the people around us improve their emotional intelligence, if we can raise the conversation or even raise the topic, like make emotional intelligence a point of conversation in the circles that we're in, we would change the world. As I was thinking about this, I thought, man, how different would my career have been if my boss had higher, or my bosses, I've had multiple bosses, if my bosses had higher emotional intelligence, right? Think about some of the bosses that you've had, and how different would your job satisfaction, and job satisfaction is tied to employee engagement, and it's tied to employee performance and productivity and all these things. How different would your career have been if your boss would have had higher emotional intelligence? There's a slide, it's in the first module of this course, where I talk about just kind of like how we talk daily about who is emotionally intelligent and who isn't. And in the slide, what I'm saying is, we don't say, well, they have high emotional intelligence and they have a high level of self-awareness and stuff like that. What I have are these two contrasting columns, and I say, okay, like, here are some words and phrases that we associate with people who have high emotional intelligence. And at the very top, I write cool. And then down below, I start listing things like, I want to work with that person. Like, we've all said this, or we've thought it. Like, there's somebody on teams that we've been on where we're like, man, I like working with that person. They're fun to work with. I want them on my team. Those are signs of someone who has high emotional intelligence. Not that you do, although you're being aware of them, but that you even say that about them. They probably have high emotional intelligence because you're gravitating towards them. And so one of the casual ways that we would talk about people who have high emotional intelligence is somehow we put them under the umbrella of like, they're cool. I like them. They're cool. I'm not really sure how I would describe all that, but they're cool. And then on the other column, I wrote, in contrast to cool, jerk, right? Have you ever worked with someone who's a jerk? And I have. I've worked with plenty of people who are jerks. And these are people who are like, okay, I recognize that I need to do a project with you right now, but when we're done, I don't want to be on your team anymore. And if you're on a team over there, I'm going to go over somewhere else, right? And those are probably because those are people who have low emotional intelligence. One of the examples that I use in the course was about the Dr. House from TV. And Dr. House has amazing technical competencies and abilities, and he can solve any medical mystery, right? And by the end of the hour, however long the show was, but nobody liked him. Like, the other doctors despised working with him. Patients hated him. Management hated him. And I'll tell you what, it makes for a great show, right? To be Dr. House, where you're like the smartest person in the room and you're always right and you always figure it out when nobody can figure it out, and people are going down this hole, and because of your breadth and depth of knowledge and your ability to think creatively and critically, you're able to say, wait, you guys are on the wrong path. You need to come over here. And then bam, we save the person's life. And at the end of the day, you did save the person's life, but everybody still thinks you're a jerk, right? And so this is the contrast between a high emotional and a low emotional intelligence. And I'm not talking about your technical proficiencies. Like, I'm not even really thinking about in this course whether you're technically proficient or not, because that's on you. Like, that's something you can go work on, you can study, you should know where you're at on that. And you probably can think, okay, I'm a little smarter than these people and not as smart as these people. I don't want to talk about any of that at all. What I want to do is focus on your ability to be emotionally intelligent. So if you go out and Google emotional intelligence, one of the first things you'll find is that there are 5 what I call pillars or characteristics. I call them pillars mostly, but characteristics or components of emotional intelligence. These are the things that make you emotionally intelligent. And so the first one is self-awareness. Everything pivots around self-awareness. Your ability to be aware of you and who you are. Now, I should say, I think a lot of people, and I saw this on videos on YouTube a lot, people are like, oh, well, emotional intelligence is, we're talking about emotions. And they really focus heavily on emotions. And I think that's why some people get turned off by the topic of emotional intelligence, is because it's like, well, I don't really care about emotions, or I don't want to do a deep dive on emotions, or I'll look into that frou-frou stuff later. But what I found was emotional intelligence is not a deep study of or even have at the core of it what your emotions are, right? So the core of it are these 5 pillars. So first, your self-awareness, and definitely it's awareness of emotions and feelings and things like that, but it's deeper than just awareness of your emotions. I mean, I'm thinking about some teenager that's very dramatic. They're probably aware, and everybody else is aware about their emotions, but that's not emotional intelligence, just being aware of your emotions. The second pillar is self-regulation, which I love. And so if you want to do a deeper dive on self-regulation and things like that, self-control, there is a phrase that you should write down and go look up. I think it's a fascinating concept. I learned about it I think in my senior year of school, where we took this exam, this personal assessment, and it was all about what's called locus of control, LOCUS, locus of control. And the idea behind locus of control is, do I believe that what I do has an impact on outcome? Okay, so I actually have a very high locus of control, which means I believe that I do things and those things have an impact on my future or someone else's future. Whereas someone who has a very low locus of control is kind of like, well, whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter what I do. And whatever happens is just going to happen. And I really have no impact on that. And I can understand where those people are coming from, but that's not me. I definitely have a high locus of control. And so I think that this idea of what a locus of control is and how much impact you have on things in the future will have an impact on your ability to self-regulate, right? And so, because if you don't think that what you do matters, then why self-regulate at all, right? Okay, so the third pillar of emotional intelligence, and these aren't my pillars, although I added one at the very end, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. So the third pillar of emotional intelligence is self-motivation. Am I motivated to do things? And the more I become motivated, or more that I find motivation, or the more I figure out how to spark motivation in my day or my life or whatever, the higher emotional intelligence I have. I think it's interesting, if you go to YouTube, there are tons of videos on motivation, right? With like this really intense hip hoppy music and like athletes that are doing crazy things and stuff like that. Like, motivation is a real thing, and it is a critical component of emotional intelligence. Okay, the fourth one is, it can be called one of two things. The first one is self-awareness. And so the fourth one sometimes is called awareness of others. How aware of other people am I? The other way that some people list this, because if you go look at like what are the characteristics of emotional intelligence, you'll find different lists, but they're all kind of the same, right? And so there's usually 5 components, and they usually are these things, but sometimes they're just called differently. So some people call this awareness of others. Other people call it empathy. And if you haven't done a study on the difference between sympathy and empathy, do me a favor, write down empathy. You can go in for free and check out this course, Leading with Emotional Intelligence. You can go check it out and see what I talk about and what I think about. And I really do go deeper into empathy, but go research it on your own. The idea of having empathy is so powerful. It's so powerful when we can be empathetic, which is not the same as being sympathetic. The fifth pillar of emotional intelligence is, I think it's kind of a cop-out, really, because it's so broad. It's called social skills. And like I said, Pluralsight probably has over 300 courses on professional development or soft skills. And a lot of those courses really go into what we would call social skills. And so sometimes people, instead of social skills, they'll put like communication skills or something like that, which of course is a social skill, like being able to communicate. And I'm talking about communicating outbound, whether it's verbal or visual or typing or writing, or communicating inbound, which is what we hear or what we see, what we take in, and then what we do with that information. So social skills is the fifth part. Now, the problem that I had, and when I was talking with my friend in my living room, and she was going through all of this, and she was giving examples, and she was telling me, here are some exercises that we do to increase self-awareness, and here are some things we talk about to increase self-control or self-regulation and self-motivation and empathy and awareness of others and all these other things. And by the way, when I talked with her, I thought, okay, part of what I do in my courses is I want to help you understand the concept, right? I want you to be able to wrap your brain around this and say, okay, I get it now. But the other thing that I want you to do, and this has everything to do with my my view on locus of control, and that we have an impact on things. I want to give you exercises. I want to give you doable exercises that you can look at this and say, okay, I want to increase this thing. What are like 2 or 3 or 4 steps that I can take to get better at that thing? And so this is actually one of the first courses that I've done. This was course like number 34 or 35 or something like that. This is one of the first courses that I've done where I made, here are the actionable steps that you can take to increase this particular thing. And I give you multiple ideas, and then you choose. I'm not going to tell you exactly what to do, but you can choose from this list of ideas, or hopefully it inspires ideas. All right, so we're sitting there talking in my living room, and she's like, all right, self-awareness and self-regulation and self-motivation and empathy and social skills. And I have this one person in my mind who I think has amazing emotional intelligence. And then I have this other person in my mind who is a horrible person, just a rotten person. And what I'm thinking is they both have high self-awareness. Okay, cool. They both have high self-control. Really, I think, the really awesome person has self-control in a way that he gives and helps people feel loved and cared for. And the other person has really calculated, isn't that kind of a bad word when we're talking about personalities? Calculated and precise and strategic self-control, but it's to hurt people, right? And maybe not always physically, but there's definitely this, that I don't even understand it, but there's this idea that this person needs to hurt other people. And I think it takes a lot of self-control to like be in that lane to always hurt other people, right? Because I couldn't be in that lane hardly at all. I need to jump out of that lane. And then I'm thinking, okay, they're both motivated. Both of these people have high motivation. Both of these people have a high awareness of others. And I'm thinking, okay, we're not even at the fifth pillar yet. And I got this one person on one side who is amazing and wonderful. And I would say they have high emotional intelligence. They're in that cool category, right? And then I got this other person on the other side who has all the same things. They check off all the check boxes, and they're in the jerk category. And I'm just not understanding it. And so then I go to social skills, and I think, okay, well, this nice person, the cool person, has great social skills, and everybody feels that. And this other person has a high awareness of social skills. And I'll tell you what, if you don't know what's behind the curtain on that person, they seem like they have really high social skills. And what I'm getting to in my conclusions as I'm listening to this lady is I'm like, they both have high emotional intelligence, really. But there's a massive critical missing piece. And so I don't want to say that they both have a high EQ. If they both were to take these assessments that you can find online for free, would the cool person be way up here and the jerk be way down here? No, I think they would both actually be way up here. And so I want to take this one step further and add one more element of what creates real, genuine, powerful, impactful, and positive emotional intelligence. Not someone who is out to manipulate you because they understand how to manipulate you. When they know what your buttons are, they have a high awareness of your buttons, right? And so what I talk about in the course is what I would consider as a missing piece to this whole pillar model. You have 5 pillars. So I don't know if this is a 6th pillar or if it's a foundational thing or a cap or whatever. And as much as I want to say what it is right now, I'm not going to, because it is in part of the Pluralsight course. So go on Pluralsight, look up Leading with Emotional Intelligence. It's in the first module where I talk about this. It's towards the end where I kind of lay the whole foundation of what emotional intelligence is and all the pillars. And then I say, you know what? There is this massive missing piece to the whole thing. The second module, so by the way, what I did is the course is pretty short. It's a little over an hour long. And in the first module, I really dive deep into 2 of the 5 pillars. And then in the second module, I dive into 2 more pillars. And then the third module, I dive into 1 pillar. So the second module, I talk about self-regulation and how to make better decisions, especially in high pressure situations. So if you're a boss, I talk about high pressure situations, and I say that's basically the definition of being a leader, that you have to perform under high pressure situations. So I talk about how to self-regulate or have self-control with exercises. And then I talk about social skills. And like I said, there really are a ton of social skill courses in Pluralsight. We don't go into we're not psychologists and stuff like that. We really come at it as peers and colleagues talking about workplace. But I'll tell you, one of my favorite types of comments that I have on my listening course, which is a social skill, is people say, this is good. Here's what I got out of it. And by the way, I'm going to take this home. I'm going to implement this in my home. There was somebody who wrote a comment on the course, on the listening course, that said something about, my girlfriend and I are in the process of breaking up. We've had really deep, intense conversation, and I'm going to go back and try and have another conversation with these listening skills, right? And that's why I'm saying, if we can improve emotional intelligence in our life, if we can figure out how to take these things, right? Social skills and awareness of others and awareness of, how are we not going to change the world for better? All right, the third module I talk about, it's improving coaching and relationships through better EQ. This is where I talk about mentoring. And interestingly, in mentoring, I don't know if you've ever been a mentor, but sometimes it's kind of a drag. Like you're going to sit down with somebody and you're just not feeling it, And so I talk about self-motivation, which is the third pillar in emotional intelligence. But I also talk about motivation for the other person and the idea of, can we motivate others and how can we best motivate others and things like that. And so I talk about exercises that we can do to increase motivation in ourselves and help other people become motivated and I'm more of the carrot than the big stick. You've seen the idea of putting a stick out here on an animal's head and then hanging a carrot, and that's they're chasing after the carrot and they'll never get it, but there's always this carrot right in front of them that they could maybe win as a prize. And that's one way to motivate. And the other way to motivate is just to have a big stick and be like, I'm going to fire you, or I'm going to dock your pay, or I'm going to cut your hours, or I'm going to put you on horrible projects, or, something like that. I'm not really into the threatening motivational leadership style. I'm much more into the carrot style, not the carrot that's never achievable, but just something that you can really go towards instead of something that you're running from. Okay, so once again, emotional intelligence. If we increase self-awareness, self-regulation, self-motivation, the first 3 things are about us, right? And then we increase our awareness of others and our social skills. How would we be as a boss? Wouldn't we be an amazing boss? I still want you to be technically proficient. I want you to be awesome. I want you to be really good at what you do and what your job is. But I also want you to be someone who people say, I will go to the end of the earth and back for that person. And I've had bosses like that. And I've had employees who have said things like that to me, which is really amazing. And when we have that type of work relationship, not only are we able to accomplish amazing things, but guess what? I like going to work. and they like going to work and we like being on the same team. It doesn't mean that we never have problems. It doesn't mean that we don't disagree. It doesn't mean that, all the bad stuff just goes away and we live in this super happy place now. But it does mean that what we're creating and the relationship that we have maybe insulates us from those bad things or the impacts of those bad things, and we can work better together. So think about increasing the impact of increasing emotional intelligence as a boss, as a worker, employee, teammate, colleague, etc., as a vendor, as a service provider, all of these things. This is, I think, the most meaningful, the most impactful course that I can leave. If I were to have to choose one and say, Jason, what do you want your final message to be? It would be this. I like the emailing course because it's outbound communication. I like the listening course because it's inbound communication. I like the working with other personalities because it helps me understand. I mean, a lot of those actually go into the fifth pillar, which is the social skills, right? I like a lot of those things, but this is the course that when I was done, I was like, this is my mark. This is what I want to be known for. Not only having a high emotional intelligence myself, hopefully, which is something that I continue to work towards, but helping other people increase their emotional intelligence. So with that, go check it out. It's on Pluralsight. You can look under ALBA, ALBA, or you can look for emotional intelligence, or I go to Google a lot. I'll go to Google and type Pluralsight emotional intelligence and then find the course there. For the month of April 2020, you get free access. And if you don't know how to do that, just reach out to me. If you're watching this after the month of 20 or after April of 2020, then reach out to me. I'm Jason at jibberjabber.com, and I might be able to hook you up with a free 30-day pass. With that, thanks for joining us. Tomorrow, we are talking about the email course, which, like I said, sounds kind of boring, but there is a reason why it's one of my more popular courses. So we'll talk about that Tuesday, the 14th. Talk soon. Bye.